There comes a moment in every person's life when the path ahead seems completely hidden. You've done everything you know to do, you've prayed, planned, and pushed, but still nothing seems to move. You feel like you've come to the end of your strength, the end of your wisdom, and the end of your understanding. It is in that very place where human effort runs out that divine possibility begins. You see, faith is not born in comfort. Faith grows when sight fails. As long as you can figure everything out, you don't need to believe. But when you reach a point where there are no answers, when every door closes, when your mind is exhausted, and your resources are gone, that's when belief becomes your only bridge. Believing God for the impossible is not about pretending you're strong. It's about acknowledging that you're weak, but trusting that His power is not. It's about standing in front of a Red Sea with no boat, no bridge, and no idea how to cross, yet still declaring, "I will not die here." Because you understand something. God specializes in what man calls impossible. When you have no idea what to do next, that's not the end of your story. That's the stage being set for divine direction. Sometimes God allows confusion to empty you of your own plans, so you can finally hear His. He will often withhold clarity until you're quiet enough to listen. You may not see the full map, but He will always give you the next step. The impossible is not an obstacle to God. It is an opportunity. Every miracle recorded in Scripture was born from someone who faced something they could not control. The impossible gives God a canvas to reveal His greatness. If you could solve it yourself, it would not need faith. But faith is the currency of heaven. It is the language that moves the unseen into reality. Don't let uncertainty paralyze you. When you don't know what to do what you do know. Stand still and believe. Keep your heart in expectation. Keep your mouth in agreement with what He promised, not with what you see, because faith does not deny reality. It declares that God's word is greater than reality. You must learn to believe beyond logic. Logic says it can't be done. Faith says with God all things are possible. Logic says there's no way. Faith says God will make a way. Logic says it's over. Faith says it's just beginning. When life takes you into unknown territory, don't panic. Pivot into trust. The unknown is not a curse. It's a classroom. It's where God teaches you that His presence is more reliable than your plan. You may not have the roadmap, but you have the guide. And as long as He's with you, you're not lost. You're being led. So believe Him again, even when nothing makes sense, even when you feel unqualified, unprepared, or unseen. Believe Him for the impossible, because that's where His glory shines the brightest. The situations that break your strength are the ones that reveal His sovereignty. You are never out of options when your faith is alive. God can take what looks like an ending and turn it into the beginning of something you never imagined. He can open doors that don't exist. He can raise what has died. He can multiply what was too little. Don't measure your future by your current condition. Don't define your destiny by your confusion. When you have no idea what to do next, just lift your eyes and believe. Because God never calls you to figure everything out. He calls you to trust Him while He's working everything out. And when you come through, and you will, you'll realize that the impossible was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to introduce you to the God who does all things well. The impossible is God's platform to reveal His power when human strength and understanding reach their limits. Every person who has ever walked with faith has faced a moment when they stood before something that looked too great, too heavy, too complex to overcome. That moment is not a sign of failure, it is a divine invitation. It is the place where heaven begins to move because earth has reached its end. When human ability collapses, the stage becomes clear for God to demonstrate what only He can do. That is why the greatest miracles in life often rise from the darkest places, because only in the absence of control does faith have space to operate. God waits for the moment when we stop relying on our reasoning and start leaning on His promise. It is there that the impossible transforms from a wall into a doorway. Many people spend their energy trying to avoid the impossible. They want everything to be predictable, manageable, and explainable. But the life of faith is never meant to be lived by sight. The moment you can explain everything you are doing, you have stepped out of faith and into logic. The impossible is not a punishment. It is a classroom where God teaches us His nature. It forces us to look beyond the natural and reach into the supernatural. When you come to a place where you have no resources, no connections, and no control, you are positioned perfectly for God to reveal that He is more than enough. The reason God often allows the impossible to appear in our lives is not to destroy us but to develop us. The impossible stretches belief, breaks pride, and builds dependency on divine wisdom. When everything works according to plan, you can take the credit. But when nothing works except His power, He gets the glory. That is why God often lets our plans fail, to make room for His purpose to succeed. When the children of Israel stood before the Red Sea, they had no boat, no bridge, and no way forward. Behind them was an army ready to kill them. In that moment, their human resources were worthless. But it was in that exact place that God revealed Himself as the God who makes a way where there is no way. He waited until there was no possible escape, so that when the sea opened, they would know it was not by their strategy, but by His power. Every believer must come to that point in life when they stop fighting the impossible and start embracing it as part of the journey. The impossible is a signal that God is ready to manifest something extraordinary. When you face a situation that no one can fix, you are standing on sacred ground. That's where faith becomes more than a word. It becomes a lifeline. Faith is not just believing God can do something. It is knowing that even when nothing is working, He still will do something. The impossible is not there to test your intelligence. It is there to test your confidence in His faithfulness. When you run out of options, you discover the true meaning of dependence. You realize that your future does not rest on your plans, but on His promises. The impossible reminds you that you are not the source of your own breakthrough. You can plan, prepare, and pursue, but there will always come a time when your efforts are not enough. That is the moment when the supernatural takes over. God steps into the scene not because you deserve it, but because His power is perfected in your weakness. You may feel unqualified, unprepared, or incapable, but those are the very conditions God uses to display His strength. He does not need your perfection. He needs your surrender. The impossible reveals the limits of man and the limitless nature of God. It teaches you that success in the kingdom is not determined by ability, but by alignment. When you align your faith with His purpose, impossibility loses its authority. That is why people who believe without evidence often witness what others only talk about. They refuse to be moved by what they see because they understand that what they see is temporary, but what God has spoken is eternal. The impossible is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of a divine revelation. Sometimes God allows your situation to become impossible so you will stop depending on familiar systems. As long as you have a backup plan, your faith will never grow. So He shuts the doors you were counting on, removes the people you were relying on, and blocks the paths you were walking on, not to hurt you, but to shift your dependence. When the brook dried up for Elijah, it was not a sign that God abandoned him. It was an indication that God was moving him to the next dimension. The impossible is a transition point. It moves you from comfort into calling, from human effort into divine manifestation. You must learn to stop measuring God's power by your situation. The impossible does not limit Him, it reveals Him. The same God who created the universe out of nothing can create a breakthrough out of nothing. What looks like the end to you is often the beginning to Him. When your back is against the wall, He is behind the wall, preparing an opening you cannot see. The impossible reminds you that your role is not to figure everything out. Your role is to believe that He can. Faith does not grow in safe places. It grows in seasons when you have no plan B. The impossible is the soil where miracles take root. It humbles your heart and sharpens your vision. You start to see that the God who spoke light into darkness is the same God who can speak purpose into your chaos. You begin to understand that every limitation is an opportunity for Him to prove Himself faithful once again. Every closed door is an announcement that a divine door is about to open. When you face something that looks impossible, remember that impossibility is not the language of heaven. Heaven never sees limitation, only opportunity. God is not intimidated by what overwhelms you. He waits for you to bring it to Him so He can reveal His nature as the one who does exceedingly abundantly above all that you can ask or think. The moment you place the impossible in His hands, it ceases to be impossible. The impossible brings you to a place of surrender where your heart whispers, "Not my will, but yours be done." It is in that surrender that miracles are born. Because the greatest demonstrations of power are not found in control, but in trust. The impossible forces you to depend on God's timing, not your timeline. You may not see how or when it will happen, but faith tells you it already has in the realm of the unseen. So, when everything in your life seems out of control, and you've done all you can do, stand still in faith. That is the posture of those who witness the impossible become reality, because God will never share His glory with your logic. He waits until the situation is beyond you so that when the breakthrough comes, the only name that can be praised is His. When you have no idea what to do next, faith becomes your guide, and trust becomes your strategy for divine direction. Every person reaches a point in life when plans fail, doors close, and silence fills the space where answers used to live. It's in that quiet confusion that faith steps forward and whispers, "Follow me." Faith does not need a map, only a promise. It does not ask for explanations. It listens for instruction. When everything around you seems uncertain, faith becomes the compass that points you toward what you cannot yet see. You may not know the destination, but you can know the voice of the one who leads you there. That's why faith and trust are not optional. They are the tools that carry you through the fog of the unknown. When you no longer know what to do, the temptation is to panic, to rush, or to force something to happen. But faith teaches stillness before strategy. Faith teaches you to pause before you plan, because in the stillness, God speaks. He often hides direction in silence to test whether you trust His presence more than His instructions. Many people want clarity before they move, but faith moves before clarity. You don't wait to understand, you step because you believe. The next season of your life will not come from your ability to predict it, but from your willingness to obey even when you don't comprehend it. Trust is not built in moments of understanding, it is built in moments of confusion. When you can't trace his hand, you must trust his heart. When you have no strategy, you must rest in his sovereignty. Sometimes the reason God withholds direction is that he wants you to stop depending on direction and start depending on him. He doesn't want you to worship the plan. He wants you to walk with the planner. You might feel like you're standing in the middle of nowhere, but you are actually standing in the center of his attention. The unknown does not mean you are forgotten. It means you are being refined. Faith is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the confidence to move forward in uncertainty. When you have no idea what to do next, it's not a sign that something has gone wrong. It's a sign that something new is about to begin. God often leads you into seasons that make no sense to your mind because he is preparing you for results that will make no sense to your past. Every time you step into the unknown, he increases your capacity to hear his voice. The unknown is a training ground for trust. It removes distractions and forces your dependence. There will be times when you cry out for answers and hear nothing, but silence is not absence, it is alignment. God's quiet moments are not rejection, they are preparation. When he delays instructions, it's because he's arranging details that are beyond your sight. While you are waiting, he is working. The problem is that most people mistake waiting for wasting. But waiting in faith is never wasted time. It is sacred time. It is in the waiting that trust matures. You must learn to trust the rhythm of God. He moves differently from man. Man works according to deadlines. God works according to destiny. His timing may frustrate you, but it will never fail you. When you have no idea what to do, let peace be your signal. His peace is proof of his presence. If you don't feel peace about a step, stay still. If you feel peace even in confusion, keep walking. Peace is not the absence of storms. It is the assurance that you are not walking alone through them. Faith becomes your guide not by removing uncertainty, but by redefining it. Faith looks at uncertainty and says, I may not know what's next, but I know who's leading me. Trust transforms confusion into confidence because it reminds you that God sees what you cannot. The steps you don't understand are part of a story you will one day thank him for. Every delay has a direction. Every silence has a strategy. Every detour has a design. What looks like a pause in your life is often a pivot. God is shifting your position to align you with a purpose bigger than your current understanding. When you trust God in seasons of uncertainty, your faith becomes stronger than your fear. You stop depending on evidence and start living by expectation. Trust allows you to release control without losing hope. It helps you rest while you wait because you know that confusion in your life does not mean confusion in heaven. Heaven is not scrambling to fix what you cannot figure out. God already has the blueprint for what looks broken to you. Your job is not to see the full picture, but to take the next obedient step. There will be moments when you want to quit because you see no progress, but trust keeps you moving when your feelings tell you to stop. Feelings fluctuate, faith focuses. Feelings look at what's visible, faith listens to what's invisible. That's why faith is not emotional, it's positional. You position your heart in belief even when your mind is uncertain. The moment you decide to trust instead of panic, heaven begins to work on your behalf. Trust does not change God's plan. It changes your posture in the middle of His plan. When you don't know what to do next, remember that faith doesn't ask how. It simply says yes. It says yes to the unknown, yes to obedience, yes to divine timing. The path of faith rarely comes with explanations. Abraham didn't know where he was going, but he went. Joseph didn't understand why he was in a pit, but he trusted. Peter didn't know if he could walk on water, but he stepped out anyway. Each of them moved before they understood, because faith operates in movement, not in mastery. Trusting God means you stop trying to write your own instructions and start reading His. It means you stop depending on signs and start depending on His Spirit. It means you surrender your timetable for His perfect season. The more you trust, the less you fear. Fear feeds on the unknown, but faith feeds on promises. You cannot hold both tightly at the same time. One will always silence the other. When you choose trust, fear loses its voice. Sometimes you will feel like you are walking in circles, but God uses circles to strengthen consistency. Sometimes you will feel like nothing is happening, but the unseen is always moving. The roots of trust grow in darkness, not daylight. Just because you don't see progress doesn't mean there isn't purpose. Faith walks by light that comes one step at a time. If you can't see the next 5 years, that's okay. See the next step. God never promised clarity, but He promised guidance, and guidance requires trust. So when you have no idea what to do next, take a breath, quiet your spirit, and remember that divine direction doesn't always come through thunder. Sometimes it comes through a whisper. You will hear it when your heart is still enough to listen. Trust is not a one-time decision. It's a daily posture. It's waking up each morning and saying, I don't know what's ahead, but I know who holds my day. It's choosing faith over frustration, peace over panic, surrender over striving. Because when faith guides you and trust anchors you, the unknown can no longer intimidate you. It becomes the very space where God's direction begins to unfold.